Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my studio. If this is your first time here, I'm Kelly, and I'm a sacred artist and curator in Kansas City. For the last 2 weeks, I've focused on play and experimentation in the studio, and today's video is a mix of footage, vlogs, and meditations on the process of what it means to take risks through play in the studio. I hope you enjoy. I'm so glad you're here. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to be a beginner. As an artist, I constantly feel like I'm a beginner because in a way, every work of art is a whole new landscape to learn, or a kind of mystery. You just have to start, even though you can't see the end. I remember when I started drawing more seriously, trying to improve my technique and skills when I was about 12 years old. It was really daunting. I didn't have any space in my schedule for art classes, so I was on my own. There was no YouTube when I was that age, so I checked out books from the library. I spent hours poring over internet forums and blogs, finding tutorials, and I practiced, and then I practiced some more. There's this phrase, biting off more than you can chew, and it definitely has a negative connotation. But I was constantly biting off more than I could chew. That's sort of my modus operandi. I've never been the best artist with the most raw talent, but I can bite off more than I can chew. Do I have some raw talent? Yeah, of course I do. I have a natural aesthetic sensibility, but that's something that can be learned and cultivated. What I really have that is valuable is that audacity to bite off more than I can chew. The audacity to think that I might be able to do the thing that's in my head, and the courage to start. But I haven't always been this way. There have been times in my life when I've lost my courage. Interestingly, as a classical music student, I struggled to have the same kind of courage I had when I was making visual art. I think that it's because in classical singing, you're really focused on learning correct technique, singing the right notes and rhythms, having perfect diction. There's so much emphasis on doing things the right way. I stopped playing in the studio. I stopped exploring and trying new things. Instead, I focused on doing things as perfectly as I could, as often as possible. I missed out on the artistic process entirely. I was never asking myself, what choices can I make today? Instead, I was just showing up and repeating my songs as often as possible, trying to be as perfect as I could. But when you try to be perfect, your choice vanishes. This was in so many ways a kind of death of my creativity, and a hollowed out version of the artistic process. When my creativity vanished, so did my courage. I spent nearly 10 years in that fear-motivated place of just trying to be good enough, that I could be accepted, to be as perfect as possible. I was a good singer, but I made very little art. When I came back to painting in my late 20s, I started playing again, even though I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time. It felt like I had begun speaking my native language again after years of being denied the opportunity. The more I let go, the more courageous I got, and my art practice was born. Now, 8 years into my practice, and much busier as an artist, with enough work under my belt to be confident and courageous, I still have to remind myself to play. I still have to consciously tell myself to have that audacity to try new things. record this podcast for my Patreon supporters every 2 weeks called Studio Musings. And at the beginning of the year, I talked to them a little bit about some of the goals I was setting and how one thing was that I wanted to understand more about where my time was going. Efficiency wasn't necessarily the goal, but more of a desire to make space for the things that are really important to me. And I had a week this year already where I worked like a 48-hour work week, and 0 of those work hours were art making, like no brush to paper, nothing. And I didn't feel shame about that, but it was like sobering, because it's true that most artists, when they get busier and farther along in their career, they don't necessarily have all these swaths of time to make work. The busier you get, the more things you're managing, especially if you don't have an assistant or someone working with you, the harder it is to make time to make art. It's this weird paradox that's really hard. And so it was good for me to see that, to be recording my hours and where they go, and to discover that. And so this week I've made this huge adjustment, and I think I've realized that one of the things that's like held me back from making art is I often think when I sit down at the painting table to make work, the reason why I don't do it as often as I want is I have this mindset of I don't have that much time to make art, and so it needs to be like really serious and meaningful and important. And I haven't been making space for creative play, which is something I just didn't realize until this week when I started doing it again. And I've been shocked at how many paintings just like poured out of me this week because I dedicated between 8 and 10 hours to making art, to painting and sculpting. And it's just crazy how good it's been for my soul. And I've even tried and discovered a few new things in the studio this week. It's just been the best week. So I've had these little canvases around for quite a while as a place to play, and I've incorporated shards of metal into my work, which you see kind of right here. I've incorporated those for a while now, but never really figured out how to make them consistently stay, and I kind of figured that out this week. And so these are all in progress. I've been working on some commission studies, so this is one of 2. So this is kind of fun because you can see how the similar idea is playing out compositionally in 2 different ways. So same colors, the inspiration behind it is the same, but like it's playing out in a couple different ways. So literally, and a lot of these aren't done, but I'll play with similar colors across the canvas or the piece of paper across a lot of different paintings at the same time. But it's just so fun. Like I can switch gears pretty quickly, and it ends up with work like this, which is so fun. I love this one. I'm kind of stuck on it right now because I like it. I'm feeling a little too precious about it, meaning that I really like it how it is, but I kind of know that it's not done, and I can't figure out what I want to do next. So I'm stuck on it. Oh, this one's pretty. This only has a couple of layers on it. But I'll be releasing a collection of small paintings this coming spring, probably within the next 6 weeks or so, I'm guessing, on my website. Okay, so I'm taking a quick break into this video to tell you a little story, or to share part of the bumps in the road of playing and experimenting with you. So you've seen me working on a clay sculpture in this video a lot that's of a head. It's almost like a bust. And I'm planning on incorporating that into a painting study for my Beatitudes project, just to kind of see what I can do. So this is like a big part of when I'm developing any new body of work, which I'm doing now. And in my last video, I talked a little bit about the rituals I go through on the front end with research and planning for a body of work. Well, I'm also in this phase where I'm starting to experiment and do studies. And I'll do a longer video on that at some point, like what that process is like when I get more into it. But I'm making this sculpture basically to answer some questions that I have about whether I can do larger kind of relief type sculptures emerging from my paintings. That's something that I'm really interested in doing. I started to kind of explore that in my last body of work, O Mirabile Mysterium. And if you had told me even a year ago that I was gonna do sculpture as a main part of any work, I would have laughed, because I have no experience with sculpture, no training. And I just did a couple of sculptures last spring in 2022 as kind of an experiment, like, oh, I would love to do this. I see this in my head, but I don't have the skill set to do it. And rather than just give up and not try, I had the audacity to like go ahead and give it a try and see what happened. And what came out of it was actually, I think, really quite good for a beginner. Can I improve? Yes, for sure. I really want to take my sculptural skills to the next level with this next body of work and just in my practice in general. But right now, I'm kind of branching out and trying other clays and other materials. And the reality is my technical skills with clay are just not where they are with ink and paint and pretty much any other visual art medium. I just don't have the experience, and I am having a hard time getting into a sculpture class right now that a lot of them are full where I would like to take one. And so what I'm doing is going on the internet and reading, checking out books from the library. I am watching YouTube videos, and I'm just learning by experience. Well, that beautiful bust sculpture, which I was really happy with how it was developing, I totally ruined it last week. I have to keep it from drying out in the middle of my sculpting sessions when I'm carrying it between studios and having to let it rest overnight. And I've been covering it really lightly with a paper towel and trying my best to transport it carefully. And that's worked pretty well, except sometimes the paper towel kind of sticks to the sculpture and it gets too wet and it leaves an impression on it. And so I decided to try using a flour sack towel scrap instead. That was just very, very lightly damp, hardly wet at all, I thought. But it must have really absorbed moisture maybe from the extra paper towel that was in the bag that had some moisture in it. Regardless, the next time I went to unwrap that figure, its features were like mush. I like just ruined so much of the detail work I did. And I think I probably lost around 3 or 4 hours of sculpting work. So I could throw in the towel and say, oh, I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm doing, or just be really frustrated and give up. Or what I'm really gonna do is just sit back down and be like, okay, I learned something. I'm never going to cover sculptures that way. In fact, I'm gonna now try and see if there's other creative ways to transport sculpture that is like maybe in a Tupperware or something that keeps it from getting squished or wrapped too tightly, and I'm not gonna wrap my figures directly anymore. So that was a lesson I just learned the hard way. Maybe I would not have done that had I been in a sculpture class, but it's just kind of the way it is. So when you have the audacity to play and try new things, you're gonna make mistakes, and it's not the end of the world, it's okay. That mistake doesn't make me less of an artist. It's not that I'm not intelligent, it's not that I can't figure things out. It's just that we all make mistakes, and that's a whole part of the game. And so I wanted to share that story with you to let you know that like I'm not just trying new things and succeeding and it's all going amazingly. Like it goes badly sometimes, or not how I expected it to in a bad way. And you just have to pick up and keep going, and you keep the end goal in mind. And I'm gonna go over there and spend the next couple of hours teasing those details back out of that sculpture. And in the end, I have learned something. So I hope sharing my misfortune made you feel not alone, and that you will approach trying new things with courage, knowing that what's the worst thing that can happen? You waste some materials, you waste some time. Well, in the end, the things that I learned while I was making the details on that sculpture are things that can't be taken away from me, even if the sculpture gets ruined. So I am looking forward to hopefully fixing it up and bringing it to life and incorporating it into a painting. There is so much more I could say about the importance of play and experimentation for any artistic practice, but I'll leave you with just a few more encouraging words. Most of us have creative dreams, some of us buried deep within us. We feel the internal pull to make something, to write poetry or prose, to learn an instrument, to cook memorable meals, to design the perfect space, or to find an elegant solution to a problem. I could go on, but you get the idea. I truly believe that above all, we need to continue to cultivate our curiosity in the same way that many children do. Ask questions, and then don't wait around for someone's permission to find the answer, to try new things. Early in my career, one of the greatest pieces of advice I got from a more mature artist was, you don't need anyone's permission. You already have everything you need. If you're creative, or you might say if you used to be creative, consider this a nudge that you don't need anyone's permission to pick up that thing that you want to, or that thing that you thought was a part of your history. Go back. No skills are ever lost fully. Your body remembers how to do it. Don't be discouraged if it feels different now. After all, you are different. If you're returning to a creative practice you haven't pursued for years, remember that now you bring more to the table, not less. You have more experience and wisdom. You'll remember how to do what you used to do, and you'll be able to do things now that you couldn't do before. I'm certain that many of the greatest historical works of art did not emerge fully formed out of the genius of their creators. They were born out of curiosity and audacity. Artistic genius is not an elusive force you have or you don't. First, those artists get an idea, often because they've cultivated the practice of being curious. Have you noticed the way ideas just seem to find curious people? I think it's because they're alive to the world in a particular way. They're like empty vessels waiting to be filled with inspiration. They're often the ones asking, I wonder what would happen if I tried fill in the blank. Then they find the courage to move on those ideas and get started in whatever way works for them, even though they often can't see the end. This is the stage where you'll hopefully find some creative play happening. And finally, these artists have the persistence to work through their mistakes along the way, or at the very least, to pivot and keep moving in a different direction if something doesn't work. If you pursue that threefold craft daily, curiosity, audacity, and persistence, you'll make something amazing. I'm sure of it. So, what are you waiting for? The world needs you and your work. I hope you can carve out some time to be curious and playful today. So, get out there and make something beautiful.